Hi everyone, it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back to your weekly Aquatic Industry Insider. So in this video, I want to talk about the topic on everyone's minds this week. Everyone I have heard from is the Houston, Texas entrapment. I was resistant to talking about this case for a couple of days because I'm not one who wants to speculate. And when it comes to entrapment, there is often not a lot of details in the general press. I've seen this happen a lot over the last few years that I've been following entrapment incidents via sifting through my daily Google News alerts. I wrote an article for Pool Pro magazine about the ongoing issue of entrapment. It still continues to happen in North America. It still continues to happen around the world, both in terms of injuries as well as fatal and non-fatal drownings. And at the time I first wrote that article, there had been some pushback from the fact checkers at the magazine who do their job and they fact check articles that are submitted. And I remember very distinctly getting an inquiry asking to provide citations for ongoing entrapments. Because within the aquatic or the swimming pool industry, there's generally this sense that entrapment ended with the passage of the Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act in 2008. And in fact, that is not the case. And I will link to Blue Cap and some other resources where we can see that entrapments have continued to happen in North America. They have certainly been lessened through the passage of the Virginia Graham Baker Act. They've certainly mitigated a lot of circumstances where proper main drain covers, proper suction inlet covers, proper secondary devices, proper vacuum port covers. There is no question that has reduced the incident of entrapment, but I have personally encountered quite a few people through certified pool operator courses who themselves or their family members, their children have experienced hair entrapment, clothing entrapment through regular ongoing usage of facilities. Typically it is residential hot tubs and spas or swimming pools. But all of this to say is that entrapments continue to happen. They are not publicly discussed because, in my opinion, the average news person, journalist, doesn't really know how to describe it. It's not in our best interest within the industry to talk about people dying or being critically injured through injuries that sound really scary, frankly, involving pipes and suction and entrapment. So in this video, I do want to talk about the entrapment in Houston, but I do think it's very important to state up front, I don't have any special information. I don't want to create conjecture. I'm just going to look at the facts that are available in terms of the legal filing and in terms of the photos that are available of the property. I also really want to make sure that we are centering the victim in this case, because I don't want to be part of, what they say, like the true crime podcast effect, where many businesses and corporations are profiting off of the deaths and the injuries and terrible crimes that have been committed. It is really important to recognize here that an 8-year-old girl died. Her name was Alaya Lynette Jaco. She's from Texas. This is a tragedy that unfortunately is going to hopefully reform our industry and create a wake-up call for the reality that entrapment is still an issue. It has not been resolved through VGBA compliant covers, through suction limiting devices. There are still many other opportunities for entrapment. And so I want to take a little bit of a look at what is publicly available, and then leave you to your own devices when it comes to deciding for yourself. So as I already mentioned, one of the reasons I was resistant to initially commenting on this case is because not a lot of facts were available. And today it is Wednesday, March 27th, when the first reports of this that I started reading, which was Monday morning in my Google News alert, the news articles were very thin. There was not a lot of detail. And as you can imagine, your regular lay journalist or news reporter does not understand the anatomy of a swimming pool and doesn't necessarily have the correct vocabulary to explain what has happened. And so as people sent me this article and asked my opinion or what I thought had happened. I always appreciate people sending me articles because I don't see everything that happens in our industry. But the simplest thing I can say is that initially I did try to post about it on the Lakeview Aquatic Consultants Facebook page. But as you may or may not know, here in Canada, we have Bill C-18 as of late 2023. And essentially, I cannot post a news link. I can only post a photo. I cannot add any links, even hidden links, anonymized links through Bitly, they don't work. And so I was stuck unless I wanted to produce a full video. And like I said, at that point, there was not a lot of information. I didn't feel like there was anything I could add to the situation. I didn't want to pile on to a horrible tragedy before there was more information available. Today, March 27th, it's a little bit different. I had the realization while I was walking that we could easily look up photos of the property online. That is the first thing I was wondering about. What type of pool are we really talking about? So that's what we're going to look at here in this video. And then there is also now a legal filing. And so that legal filing is the family of the deceased child, Aaliyah. They have filed a lawsuit against the property. And so that legal document, in my mind, is fair game in terms of an understanding of a retelling of the events as they occurred. They may be disputed in a court of law, but it is a first-hand account from the victim's family as to what happened. We're not going to news sources that don't necessarily have all the details. This video is going to have graphic descriptions, so I would encourage you to take care. This is the most horrific case I've ever heard in terms of entrapment or fatal injury. It's excruciating. So if you think this would be upsetting, I would encourage you not to watch the remainder of this video. It is going to require describing the circumstances of her death as they've been reported, as well as the conditions of her body's recovery, which are quite graphic. To start with, I do want to look at some of the photos of the property because that can help us to understand at a basic level what type of facility we are talking about. So I want to start by identifying the facility. The facility is the DoubleTree by Hilton, Houston Brook Hollow. It's located at 12,801 Northwest Freeway in Houston, Texas. I have never been to this property. This is simply based on the legal filings and then looking up the property on the internet as you might to book it as a guest. So the first thing I did to collect photos about this property is I started by going on the internet to the official website for the DoubleTree by Hilton, which is an international brand. This particular hotel is operated as a franchise with local or independent ownership. So already you can see in the press release that'll show in a little bit that the corporation of Hilton says that they have had and do not have any involvement in the day-to-day operations of this franchise or independently owned property. But I really just wanted to find photos of the pool to start. So I have downloaded those and we'll go through them in just a moment. But I want to start by saying that there was not a lot of photos available about this pool on the internet. I started with this DoubleTree website. Then I also went to the Google My Business profile. This is the Google My Business profile. I went through all of the photos that were available here. From there, my next place to go was TripAdvisor. I have used TripAdvisor a lot myself as a frequent hotel guest all over the world. It's a great place to go and find guest photos. So not just the official photos that are taken by a professional photographer of a property, but the actual guest photos. The thing that struck me as I went through these different websites with guest photos is there's really not a lot of photos for this property. I have no idea when this property was built or how long it's been managed, but there is a dearth of photos for this hotel in general, not just this pool specifically. So you can click on the traveler photos here on TripAdvisor. I did the same thing when it came to hotels.com. I also went to booking.com. I went to Expedia, and it is the same stock photos, professional photos of the hotel throughout. It was really a struggle to find any detailed photos beyond some broad ones I'm going to show you. You can see a lot of negative reviews along the way, and I'm not going to comment on those, but you can go see them for yourselves, including reviews about the pool cleanliness, about the hotel cleanliness, the maintenance of the hotel. I have never stayed at this property, so I'm not going to speculate on that. But what I will say broadly, as a frequent hotel guest, as well as somebody who works with a lot of hotels, the reviews that you see on social media run the gamut of being either completely false or sometimes quite accurate. So you can draw your own conclusions when it comes to the caliber of this property or maintenance or the care that was being taken at this property. But I did want to highlight that it was really hard to find photos of this property. So these were really the only photos that I was able to come up with. So here is a photo. This is one of the professional photos from the side. This is another photo of some cabana areas that are available. It appears that this pool is on a rooftop. I'm not sure if it is a convention area or a lower level, like a parkade, a parking garage. We can see an overview of the pool. So this aligns with the news reports that the child was in what's been described as a lazy river. We don't know if there was actual river current movement or it's the shape of the river. There's not a lot of details. As you can see, there's really not a lot of photos that get up close in detail. I have downloaded all of these from the website, the different websites I looked at, and they're from quite far away. This was the only thing I could find that showed the pool actively in use. This was a woman who was complaining about the quality of the water when she visited during her stay. So we can see the depth markings. This was about 9 months ago. We can't get a lot of details about the water quality from this photo, but it does show the relative height of this particular child to the depth, 3 feet 6 inches. And this is outside, so this is open to the air. This is the only other photo I could find which sort of shows the depth, but we can't see any drains, any inlets, any outlets. We can't see where there would be current coming from to create a lazy river. I'm not saying it isn't a lazy river, but this photo does not show any mechanism that I can see to move the water. This is the only overview photo, and unfortunately it is not high resolution enough to really see much. So we can't draw any conclusions from this photo. And then the last ones are photos that were all stock photos repeated on all of the websites. There were very few customer photos. I suppose I could also go on Instagram and see if there's other photos available. This hotel, some of the reviews describe it as a party pool, young people booking, an overnight accommodation to sit around and drink by the pool. Look at the news report today that I read, which described a little bit of detail, and then we're going to go to the legal filing. So from here on out, we are going to be describing what happened to Aaliyah, and the conditions are quite graphic. So I would encourage you not to keep following this video if you think you might become upset. So this was a news article from today, which also links to the court filing. 8-year-old Houston girl violently sucked into Hilton Hotel pipe before death, lawsuit says. The girl was swimming in the hotel's lazy river when she was suddenly pulled into the narrow pipe and died, the lawsuit claims. So I want to pause here for a moment and say that this was part of the confusion initially for me and many other pool operators that I spoke to. What are the mechanics by which this could actually happen? So initially, when I heard this report with no more details, I immediately thought of this case from North Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. I believe it was 2019.
This morning, the fact a 12-year-old Michigan boy is alive is nothing short of a miracle. He was trapped underwater for nearly 8 minutes and survived. It happened last month at the Avista Resort in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This newly released surveillance video shows 2 boys in an unguarded lazy river pool. Signs posted near the pool indicating no lifeguards were on duty. The boys were playing over a drain when one of them lifted a grate and somehow got stuck.
The child is stuck in the drain at the pool.
Watch closely. You see the boy's head slip underwater. The other boy tries to pull him out, but can't. After he's been under for a minute and a half, the other boy yells for help.
So this is unfortunately what I immediately thought happened in Houston when there were reports that a child had drowned in a lazy river. It made sense, unfortunately, if the intake was unprotected, as it was in this case in South Carolina. I misspoke earlier, it's not North Carolina, South Carolina. They lift up, it's a very large drain cover, and then the child's leg is pulled into the pipe, the intake, and it is only after 7.5 minutes that the hotel's maintenance turn off the circulation pump that they are able to retrieve the child. This is a very compelling video. I will link to it up top. I would encourage you to watch it. I use this video when I'm teaching the certified pool operator course because this fits the bill exactly of a non-fatal entrapment that had catastrophic consequences for the family, for the child. The only reason the child survived being underwater for nearly 8 minutes is because they were given underwater breaths by a vacationing Pennsylvania corrections officer. So I'll link to this video down below. This is what I thought had happened in Houston when the initial reports came out this week. Unfortunately, if we go back to this news report and then the legal briefing for Aaliyah, this is not the case at all. So the initial reporting down here, I apologize for all of these ads. An 8-year-old girl died after being violently sucked into a large pipe while swimming at a hotel in Houston, Texas on Saturday, according to a lawsuit filed by the victim's family. The young victim, Aaliyah Lynette Jaco, was swimming in a lazy river at the Doubletree by Hilton, Houston Brook Hollow, when she suddenly disappeared at 4:50 p.m. and was pulled into a pipe. Her poor little body was contorted when she was sucked 20 feet back into this hole and pipe, the family's attorney, Richard Nava, with Nava Law Group, said at a Tuesday press conference. They had to break up the concrete and cut pipe in order to extract her. It was absolutely horrific. The suit alleges that the young girl was pulled into a 12 to 16-inch unsecured open gap in the swimming pool flow system. So these details, if proven in court, are absolutely horrific. I couldn't understand in the initial reports on Monday and Tuesday, people described that the pool needed to be drained for the victim to be recovered. And that just made no sense to me because typically, if we think about entrapment, and I've got a jar here to represent a pipe, but essentially an entrapment typically involves a blockage. So once you release the blockage, like the pump pressure is resolved, then you're able to retrieve either the body part, the human, the hair, the clothing. There's no pull anymore. So unfortunately, in this case, it appears that poor Aaliyah was sucked further into the opening in such a way that she was not naturally released when the pump was shut off. That as best as we can understand, that her body ended up in the opening Whether that was a pipe or some other component of the swimming pool system is unclear to me as somebody who has not seen the site mechanical system and does not understand the engineering or the design of this particular system. It is completely unbelievable in the worst possible way to imagine that this poor girl was sucked into an opening and that her body was pulled down so hard that it, I hope, killed her instantly, but is extremely traumatic to consider. And I can't even comprehend how awful that is. I want to look a little bit at the legal filing, which gives us a little bit more detail. It does not include the mechanical items that a lot of us would like to know to understand, but it is a very helpful document to better understand where we are at. So I will link to this legal filing down below. This is publicly available, as any legal filing generally is in North America. This was filed on March 25th, so 2 days ago, in the Harris County Court of Texas. So I'm going to skip over the initial legalese, which determines, why this court case can be filed in Texas based on the residency of the victim and her family, based on the jurisdiction of the property, the ownership of the property, and I want to go straight to the facts of the situation. So I'm going to skip this first part because it basically states that it is alleged that the defendants did or failed to do any act or thing, right? Skip all this. So I want to come down to item 9 on page 3. This is the statement of facts from the family, which has filed a lawsuit seeking $1 million in damages for Aaliyah's tragic death. On March 23rd, 2024, the plaintiff, the family, rented a room to enjoy a day of swimming with her family when tragedy struck and her 8-year-old daughter, ALJ, right, Aaliyah Lynette Jaco, who loved to swim, was violently sucked into a 12 to 16-inch unsecured open gap in the swimming pool flow system of the hotel's lazy river. I honestly don't know what that means. I hope that they seek clarification with a pool mechanical specialist. At this stage, it feels like every adjective or noun was thrown into that sentence. Entrapment is typically circulation. It could be the intake of the river current component. Like, does the pool, the lazy river, have a general circulation as well as a secondary pump to create that water movement, that current for tube riding? It's impossible to know given that we just have photos. We don't have any blueprints. We don't have any mechanical knowledge of this pool, so I can't speculate. But the usage of flow system, I don't know if there's a surge tank happening. I have no idea, but this is very vague and then also very broad and imprecise. At approximately 4:50 p.m., Aaliyah was swimming with her family when she suddenly disappeared in the lazy river. The plaintiff was frantically searching for her daughter when at approximately 5:20 p.m., Miss Ahumada requested hotel management look at the video surveillance footage. So for 30 minutes, this woman was looking for her daughter and she was unable to locate her. Hotel management denied her request and explained that police would have to be present to view the video surveillance. This was a bad decision. I'm going to leave it at that. Just a bad decision. At approximately 5:45 p.m., plaintiff called 911 and reported her daughter missing, ALG missing. A major search that included Tim Miller of Texas EquiSearch. EquiSearch is an association, a nonprofit that I searched that does support victims and families of crimes. And the police were finally granted access to view the security footage, wherein it was discovered that ALG went underwater and never emerged. A team was then put together to drain the pool, and video cameras were attached to 20-foot poles to inspect the pipes when her body was discovered wedged in the pipes of the malfunctioning pool equipment. So again, this is, I don't know if it's intentionally vague, imprecise, the lawyers don't understand the system, or they want to capture more elements for their lawsuit. Just a lot to unpack there. So they had to drain the pool, which means her body, I guess, was not evident at the surface in the basin. She was not visible within the basin. I would imagine the family had walked the basin. It was relatively shallow, 3.5 feet deep. If you walk the basin and you can't find somebody, where did they go? And so unfortunately, they drained the water, and then I would imagine, I don't know for sure, this is my opinion, that they had to look into openings and they still could not see the victim. And it was at that point that they used cameras on sticks, or the same way plumbers might use a scope for a blockage. And only at that point, somewhere in that 20 feet of length, they were able to locate Aaliyah's body that was wedged within the opening. It's unclear to me, malfunctioning pool equipment. Was there some sort of equipment further down the line? We don't have any knowledge currently of the design or the mechanical setup of this pool to know for sure if we're just talking about a pipe, a joint, a connection, or was her body, heaven help us, further down, closer to the mechanical system. We don't have any of those details. As a direct result of the occurrence caused by defendant's negligent activity and/or a dangerous condition on the defendant's premises, that defendants and/or its respective agents, servants, and employees knew or in the exercise of ordinary care should have known existed, caused the tragic death of ALJ. So that is all the information that is available at this time. And so from my perspective, the facts of the case, as we can already see from the legal filings from the family seeking damages, this is just a horrific, hopefully never to be repeated circumstance, but a necessary wake-up call for our industry, who often thinks that entrapment just doesn't happen. I spend probably 45 minutes in the certified pool operator course talking about entrapment, and it's really depressing. And I've had the comment, well, why do we spend so much time on this? And in my opinion, as an instructor and someone who's worked in the industry for a long time, this is one of the most dangerous things that can happen. I hope it never happens. The same way I hope people are never burned by high levels of chemicals in the water. The same way I hope children don't drown. But this is a step that we need to consider might happen. Otherwise, we become complacent in investigating our daily inspections. So whether you are checking your drain covers for screws and bolts, whether you are checking your secondary devices, your suction limiting devices, whether you're checking your vacuum ports, your shut-off procedures, your breakers, whatever it is that you do daily, we have to keep doing that, because I would imagine to get to this horrific case, there were multiple opportunities where things could have been done differently, whether it is staffing, construction, design, operations. I don't have any secret information, but these things just don't happen out of nowhere. So I will be watching this case very closely as details emerge. I hope that we are able to be privy as an industry to some details so that we can take appropriate course of action. If there is a settlement, they may not disclose anything. There may be no admission of guilt, just an agreement of the facts, and that would be the family or the corporation's right to settle. This is a horrific case. Yeah, so that's it. Horrific case. Thank you for watching this video. I really wanted to get this information out there in such a way that is respectful to Aaliyah and her family. This is a terrible tragedy. This family is grieving a terrible loss, but I do think we need to be cognizant that this could happen anywhere where the pool is not properly maintained. Thanks so much. We'll see you again.